How to Deprogram Fox Watchers on the Trump indictment. And it's kind of written as an open letter to a friend who is, a Trump humper. I call them Trump lovers in the article because I'm just a little, a little friendlier. But Donald Trump and the fascist-supporting, billionaire-funded right wing have been lying to you about these indictments, is what I want to tell these people. His lawyer's been all over TV saying that, Joe Biden is running the prosecution and that Donald Trump is just exercising his free speech rights. Well, neither of those things are true. First of all, Biden has gone out of his way to say, no, I'm not discussing this stuff, right? I mean, for example, last night on TV, this was, or yesterday afternoon, or yesterday morning, I guess it was. Yes, maybe it was afternoon on the East Coast. Chuck Todd had John Lauro, Trump's lawyer, on, and John Lauro said, and I quote, President Biden in April of 2022 said he wanted President Trump prosecuted and he wanted him out of the race. He repeated that in November of 2022. As a result, President Biden has put in motion a political prosecution in the middle of an election season. And I'm not involved in politics. I'm just representing a client. Right. Those are all lies. I mean, like lies. But what Chuck Todd said in response to all that was, right. Honest to God, that's what he said. Well, here's what the factcheck.org says. Social media posts and former President Donald Trump are sharing an edited video of President Joe Biden to make the unfounded claim that Biden is coordinating these Trump indictments. Biden's comments made in 2022 were related to international concerns about American democracy, not about Trump's legal battles. The Associated Press also rated that claim as false. When Biden was asked about this on June 12th of this year, he said, they asked him, what do you have to say about Trump's federal indictment? He said, I have no comment on what happened. He went on to say, now this was in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, he went on to say, I have never once, not one single time, suggested to the Justice Department what they should do or should not do relative to bringing a charge or not bringing a charge. He's talking about Trump here. He said, I'm honest. Asked specifically, did you talk to Merrick Garland? He said, I have not spoken to him at all, and I am not going to speak to him. Lauro also said, it's just a technical violation of the Constitution. No, it's a violation of actual federal law. I mean, yes, it is a violation of the Constitution, and there's no such thing as a technical violation. You are either with the Constitution or you are against it. And the Constitution says that whoever wins the most electoral college votes becomes president. And that's what Donald Trump tried to disrupt. So anyhow, these are all lies. Joe Biden had nothing to do with this, and it's got nothing to do with free speech. In fact, Special Counsel Jack Smith is completely independent, or almost completely independent, of the Biden administration. This is how special counsels work. Remember Richard Nixon? He had a special prosecutor named to go after him or to investigate Watergate. The guy's name was Archibald Cox. You had to be of a certain age to remember this. I remember it vividly. And, Elliot Richardson was, at that point, was Nixon's attorney general. And Nixon went to Richardson and said, fire the special counsel. Fire Archibald Cox. And Richardson said no, and he resigned, which then put his number two in charge, William Ruckelshaus. And so Nixon went to Ruckelshaus and said, fire Archibald Cox. And Ruckelshaus said no, and he resigned, which left the insanely corrupt Robert Bork in charge. Well, not corrupt, insanely right-wing Robert Bork in charge. He's actually true to his own beliefs, which are nuts, but nonetheless. And Bork said, okay, cool, and he fired Archibald Cox. It was called the Saturday Night Massacre. In the same thing, during the Clinton presidency with Ken Starr. So, number one, Jack Smith is independent. Number two, Biden never had anything to do with Jack Smith being there. In fact, Biden kept his mouth shut for 2 years while Merrick Garland dithered. So the other argument that they're making is, oh, he's just, Trump has free speech rights. This is what the indictment says, page 2. The defendant has a right, like every American, to speak publicly about the election and even to claim falsely that there had been outcome determinative fraud during the election and that he had won. He's also entitled to formally challenge the results of the election through lawful and appropriate means, such as seeking recounts or audits. By the way, he did those things, and he lost them all, which is why now he's been charged with specific crimes: a conspiracy to defraud the United States by using dishonesty, fraud, and deceit to impair, obstruct, and defeat the lawful federal government function by which the results of a presidential election are collected, counted, and certified. A conspiracy to corruptly obstruct and impede the January 6th congressional proceeding, and a conspiracy against the right to vote and to have one's vote counted. I mean, he literally tried to prevent the votes of Democratic voters, mostly black people in cities, from being counted. And I find it interesting that mostly black people in cities part is almost always omitted by the national news. But every single one of Trump's complaints had to do with a big city. It was Pittsburgh, it was Milwaukee, it was Detroit. These are the cities in these states that have the largest black populations. He conspired with Republicans in 7 states to organize slates of fake electors. That's not free speech. That's a crime. It's an actual crime. Twice in the indictment, it mentions that Trump was planning on using the military or was considering it, and that his advisors were pushing it to lock down the United States, impose martial law, Kent State times 1,000. I mean, there were all these repeated lies. The lie that the election was stolen, that he won. The lie that fake electors' ballots could be legitimately counted. The lie that he actually tried to get the Department of Justice to put on their own letterhead to send out to the 7 states that there was fraud in the election. The lie that he repeated over and over again, that dead people, thousands of dead people voted in Georgia. Rafson-Perger said, yeah, we found 4, not 1,000, 4. The lie that in Pennsylvania there were 250,000 more votes recorded than there were voters in the state. He just literally made this stuff up. He said the same thing about Wisconsin. He said the same thing about Georgia. I mean, it just goes on and on. So, no, Trump is not being prosecuted for speaking or even for lying. He's being prosecuted for engaging in a criminal conspiracy to steal people's votes. Isn't that wrong, Trump humpers? Isn't that wrong?
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
I'd love to hear from some of Trump's supporters here. What is wrong with my logic? What am I missing?